for our second live coaching call and our second coaching call of 2019, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with me is our community manager, Deneen. She's the smartest Montessori person I've ever met. And she's here to guide us through all things that are Montessori and connect my marketing thoughts with Montessori thoughts so they actually start to make sense. So today, we're going to talk about a topic that I know nobody likes. And I know nobody likes because for all my third and fourth plane members, I'm going to poke you in the ribs a little bit. You tend to avoid this topic like the plague. And it's in the sales realm, and that's why, because I know Montessorians don't like to sell. Why is that, by the way? What's the repellent there? Is it just a
It's
temperament thing?
uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think we are so good at having natural, organic conversations, and a sales conversation isn't natural. It's usually prescribed. Um, so, we can either be really good at the sales or really good at reading the situation and knowing that it's like it may or may not work, and then trying to maneuver your way into selling somebody on Montessori. It's difficult. It's a
It
difficult,
is.
uncomfortable conversation.
And I feel like Montessorians tend to be kind of natural empaths, and if you empathize too much during a sales conversation, you tend to take the other person's side instead of your own. You're not pushing your own agenda.
Right.
Which can work against you. So today we're going to talk about specifically why online leads are fickle, because here's the truth. If you're going to do any form of marketing, but especially digital marketing, you're going to find that people who find you online are, in terms of lead, they're a lesser breed than people who are warm referrals, have driven past you every single day for the last year, knew about you elsewhere, have, stumbled across you through some form of like thought leadership or community building. Online leads in the very beginning, it's not that they're less mission appropriate. It's that in the very beginning, you have zero relationship with these people. And there's a pretty significant degree of kind of disassociation that you're going to see. And we need to adjust to that temperament. And we have to be ready to and prepared to do a lead intake. Now, we've coached a lot of our clients on this, and I think with a lot of success. Wouldn't you say, Deneen? There's some folks that we've got that really know how to do this now.
Mm-hmm. Right. And are hungry to learn. I think, that's part of the equation is if you want to learn how to bring people in and truly understand that, I think, we have some coaching involved in it. And you're really good at coaching people in that. You're also really good at sales. So there's,
I love sales. That's when you said, you're like, yeah, we don't like sales. And I'm like, I love sales.
I know, that's your thing.
Yeah, you know what it really is? I only love sales if and here's what I'm going to try to help instill in our members. If I know what I have is going to help you, it's so exciting. It's like, gosh, I just can't wait for, like if somebody has back problems and you've got special shoes that are going to fix their back problems, you're pushy. You're like, just try them on. Just, you're never going to, you know what I mean? Like you can really be very aggressive because it's for their own good. So you can only sell with integrity if you really believe in your product.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what makes Montessori so perfect to sell. It's the perfect sale because you have the best form and system of education in existence. So you should be dying to make the sale and kind of, bursting at the seams a little bit with excitement. And I imagine that's probably the case. I just want to be able to bottle it and direct it in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I want to say is that time kills sales. And that's a fact. That's actually, there's as much data on that as there is anything in the realm of marketing. They did a 20-year-long MIT study over the course of cold calls, and they can connect the ability to qualify a lead to the amount of time it takes to get in contact with that lead. And you're 1,000 times more likely to qualify a lead if you get to them within the first 5 minutes than you are if you get to them within the first hour. So when you see the graph, the first 5 minutes is just off the charts. And then there's this huge cliff and precipice. And after an hour and then 24 hours, and by 48 hours, the lead is no longer qualifiable. And if you think about the psychology that people have when they're doing this, you enter phases in your mind as to what problems you're trying to solve. And we all have so many problems and so much information coming at us nonstop that you need to be in the right mode. You need to be in the right zone to talk about any topic. Pick a topic. And you have to be kind of mentally prepared for that. And it used to be a lot easier. Prior to the advent of the internet, you used to be able to dictate the narratives that you were presented with. So I'm ready to start, shopping for a doctor. I want to find a naturopath. Well, then I get to go to the yellow pages, or I get to call the naturopath or visit the naturopath's office. And then when I'm done with my research, I'm done. Well, now if you're shopping for a naturopath, you fill out forms online, and then a day later, a naturopath calls you, and you're now in a different zone. You were shopping for a mechanic, or you're at work, or you're with your kids. And there's something about it that's actually a little annoying. And you've probably all had this experience. How many of you have filled out a form online for something that you're interested in, something that you wanted, and then when they called you, you're like, why are you calling me? And we've all done it because it's, it's the peak of hypocrisy, but it's also just kind of human nature. You wanted what you wanted then, and that was at least 15 seconds ago. And so if they haven't called you within the realm of 15 seconds, then now they're intruding on your space, and you've left that sort of mental zone that matched with their narrative. So, and I realize this isn't feasible for everybody. I understand that, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's still a goal. It's an ideal that we need to work to achieve. The faster you can get back to people, the more likely you are to qualify them. And if you don't take anything else away from this conversation other than that note, with my other business, we run just paid ads for normal businesses. We have the 5-minute rule, and we tell clients, we actually won't take clients on as clients if they can't comply with the 5-minute rule. Can you, for the most part, for the majority of inbound leads, get back to them within 5 minutes? Do you have a sales team that's capable of doing that? And if the answer is no, then I can't run PPC for you. Now, I don't think the 5-minute rule applies to Nido and to Montessori schools because we're dealing with a topic that allows for a greater degree of forgiveness in the minds of our prospects. They realize that you're busy, and it's a way more in-depth conversation than most B2B services. So 5 minutes isn't a necessity, but it's something I would like to point out and say, if you really got back to these parents in 5 minutes, you would be shocked. I bet you double your ability to qualify. And Deneen, I'm going to pause there, and I'd love for you to challenge me on that, because I'm not trying to overstate things, but I want to make sure that we talk about how important this really is.
Right. Well, it's interesting to think about, right? Because we have, most schools are short-staffed, or just are at capacity with staff. So there's a challenge there in being able to respond. But is there something, if you are in that situation, is there something that you can do that gives that person that 5-minute window? I don't know, an automatic reply, or a way for them to schedule a tour right away, so that they're feeling like they're getting what they need in that time, while you also have your time to do what you need to do, right? So I think it's a dance, because every school, it's challenging to be able to be like sitting by the phone and waiting for someone to call, but I think there's things that we can do to make that a little bit easier.
So this is how I know that you're becoming a good digital marketer, by the way. Because that's on my list, is you can get back to people without necessarily you personally having to get back to them. Right. The best, most important thing is that you hop on the phone, bam, person. And for everybody that's has any level of acquaintance with any digital marketing narrative ever, there's this horrible story we tell ourselves about automation, that, you can automate your entire business. That is an absolute, complete, total, epic lie. You can't automate your entire business, and you don't want to, because business is about people helping people with things. Where automation helps is you just get to the human connection faster. You don't want to automate out the human connection, or you no longer have a business. You now have just a bot or a commodity, and you're not really providing any value. And it's only a matter of time until somebody comes up with a better bot and you're now out of business. So we're not trying to automate communication. We're trying to automate the process that leads us to the human to human connection. And what Deneen just said is spot on. The first thing that we want to do is, if somebody reaches out to you, if they fill out a form on your website, if they chat on your website, if they call, you want a way to get back to them faster than might be humanly possible. And there are ways to do that. You can do it in the Nido marketing area. We have autoresponders specifically for people that download things or fill out forms, put them through an entire nurture, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But make sure you get back to them quickly, and try to build the processes in place in as much as is possible, so that you are answering the phone when it rings. There are answering services that aren't super cost prohibitive. If you have a front desk person, that's something to drill into them too, is no matter what you're working on, if a new lead comes in, pick up the phone and have a conversation with that lead. Before I dive into that process, I just want to stop and talk more about the psychology of our customer, because I think empathy is probably the most important. It's the most important skill in marketing. And that's what we're all doing right now. We're all marketing. And so if we can empathize with these prospects, these parents, first of all, they're definitely confused. And you know that for a fact, because they haven't made a decision yet. So if they weren't confused, they would have already made a choice. And maybe they have. Maybe they're just calling you to give you their money, which in case they're not really a lead anymore, they're just a customer. Now it's customer service. But they're definitely confused. And it's no fun to be confused. And this is an educated consumer base. These are smart people. Smart people don't like to be confused. Smart people don't like to not know. it's not their comfort zone. It's not where they live. And so you need to kind of treat them with kid gloves, where you're teaching them, but also in an environment where they don't necessarily feel like they're being taught. They feel like they're being consulted. You can't control the information that they have handy. You don't know how much they know about Montessori. You don't know how much misinformation they have. You don't know how much your competitors have, said things that maybe they shouldn't have said or whatever. And to quote someone who's dear to me and said this, parents are nuts. They're insane people, and not in general, but just when they become parents, you put on your parent hat and you immediately go nuts, because it's the most important thing in the world that we're talking about. It's like, this is my child. And I know, because I'm a dad, and I go crazy as a dad, like with really weird, I'm a hypochondriac dad. Like, I just rush my kid to the pediatrician no matter what happens. And I'm like, we might as well just do this and see what. So you're dealing with this just, altered psychology. It's the most important topic somebody could possibly have. And so you're now going to take that psychological paradigm and you're going to put yourself in a hyper-competitive ecosystem. So now you take this crazy person who's super smart and a little frustrated that they don't know the answer, and you're going to have a bunch of people talking in their ear, because they're not just talking to you. They're talking to other Montessori schools, other private schools. They might be on like Waldorf or play-based, or, they're talking to kindercare and nannies and who knows who. And everybody has their own narrative. And here's the worst part, is you're the worst salesperson in that entire list. The nanny placement company, amazing salespeople. KinderCare, amazing salespeople. Waldorf, amazing salespeople. Goddard schools, amazing salespeople. And what people are going to do is they're going to connect to the fact that, wow, you answered my call right away. You had a bunch of really good information. You sent me out this enrollment packet. You know exactly what buzzwords to use. You must be really good at training or at teaching children. And we all know that's not true. As a matter of fact, it's probably the opposite. Part of us probably has to wonder, like, hey, shouldn't you be hanging out with the kids right now? Why do you have time to answer my call? But it's the impression that we're going to give people, and that's the ecosystem that we need to be in, and that's the competitive line. And so I'm not trying to scare you, and I'm not trying to discourage you, but I do want us to be realistic about what it is that we're facing. So I'm going to pause there too, Deneen. Have I done anything that you think has made our member base mad? Do I need to correct my words?
No, I think it's really, really important for us to know what you're talking about, because I think, in our Montessori world, we get so focused on the details of how to articulate what it is that we do, and without really knowing what our competitor base is. And so this conversation is so important. And I hope that every single Montessorian in the whole world that has anything to do with marketing hears this, because it's reality in what we need to do. And I think, I'm becoming more and more comfortable with like strongly advocating for Montessori having a voice in these conversations, because the space is competitive. The child care space, the child development space is competitive. And there's just so much stuff out there that's just, quite frankly, crap. There's just not a lot of good stuff. And there's a lot of solutions being offered out there, but we know the solution, right? Letting children kind of go through the process, recognizing them as humans and not these little minions that need to be adults. You'd be surprised how many people, treat children like they're supposed to know the answer, but they don't. You got to give them opportunities. So I love it. I love that you're bringing all this up. This is super important.
And the better we get at this, the more kids we get to help.
Right.
That's the bottom line. The better we get at this, the more we get to fulfill our mission. So this is something, even though it's a little uncomfortable, this is something we have to get good at. And you said something at the beginning of this call that just made me so happy. I wrote it down. You said that you guys, Montessorians, want to have conversations. You don't want to do sales. And the best thing for sales is a great conversation. And so here's what I want to prep our user base to do. The first thing we need to do is get in front of these people on their terms. That's really important. You might like in-person meetings, but if I don't, then you just kind of lost me as a prospect. You might prefer phone calls where I want to email. So we need to get really comfortable with multifaceted communication conduits. If somebody emails you, assume they want to be emailed back. If they call you, then they want a phone call. If they want to come in, then have them come in. But know that you can build a relationship using email. You can build a relationship using Facebook Messenger and text message. And this is something that, especially for folks that didn't grow up with the internet, it escapes them, I think, completely sometimes. They feel like unless I'm in front of you and I hear your voice and I see your face and we've shook hands, we're not building a relationship at all. That is no longer true. People, especially your younger parents, they're used to this and they're comfortable with it. They're actually more comfortable with it their way. And you need to accommodate that, because if you don't, somebody else will. So that's number one, is we want to communicate with them the way they're comfortable. And number two is we want to start the conversation on their terms, but really just start the conversation. Montessori selling is having a really high quality conversation. So when somebody comes in, you have an agenda. And more often than not, if somebody calls, it's, hey, do you want to come in and schedule a tour? And I totally understand that. And I advocate for that. But that's not the way we start this conversation. If you start talking to them just briefly, hey, tell me a little bit about what you're looking for. Or, how long have you been searching? Or what questions do you have? I promise you the floodgates will open. And if they don't, they're not mission appropriate. If you ask them to tell you about them and they don't have an amazing story, these aren't people, they're just looking for a daycare. These aren't people that you're going to want in your school anyway. And when they open those floodgates, what you need to do, and what Montessorians are amazing at, is just listen. Listen, and then I'm going to add one little slight nuance to that. Listen and take notes. And it doesn't need to be, we don't need an advanced CRM with bells and whistles. Honestly, you could use Google Sheets. You want something that everybody in your organization has access to. You want something that's easy to update. So if you use Google Sheets, it's just like an Excel file. You put their name, you put whatever contact information that you currently have. And while I'm talking to you, if it's a phone call, and you're just telling me about what it is that you're searching for, what pain points you're having, who you've looked at beforehand, what you're afraid of, what you're not sure of, I'm just taking notes. That's all I'm doing. And then after I'm done listening, I now get to go back and say, and just do what Montessorians do best, which is just consult. Like, hey, here's our approach. This is why this works. This is why this is important. This is why this might not be right for you. And begin that conversation, because again, you're relationship building, and you're going to be one of the first people that did that, because where KinderCare and the nanny agency and all those other schools are going to be great at sales and they're going to pick up their phone really quick, I promise you they're going to try to fit them into a sales funnel. And they're going to try to say, hey, here's our process. This is how it works. And if you, the person with the real solution, just stops and listens and takes some time to contextualize your solution against what it is that they're saying, you're going to be the first one to build a relationship. And I feel really strongly about that. I'll pause there, Denise. I'm sorry. I'm sort of going off on tirades here.
No, that's perfect. That process right there is so important. And when you have parents come in and they reach out to you, or you have a second engagement with them, you're going to remember stuff about that conversation that I think competitors may or may not have. If you're taking those notes, I mean, that's such a great tip. Take notes on them, and then and also talk about their child. I mean, I think asking questions about your child and what what that's like, what your child is like in your world. You take notes on that, and you, in the second, third, fourth time you meet them, you remember those things.
Right.
And you're building that relationship from the very beginning. So that's great. That's a great tip.
I love that you just said talk about their child too, because it's not something I really thought of, to be honest with you, because I'm not a Montessorian. But you're absolutely right. That's my favorite topic. If anybody asks me, you want to be my best friend in the whole wide world, ask me about my kids. And then it's, pulling up the phone, going through my photos, and I've got all these stories, and they're not fun or funny or interesting any more than anybody else's kids, but I think so. And so I think if you can get people talking, and then make sure that your notes are available to everyone, because if they come in for a tour and just right before the tour process starts, somebody can scroll through and take a look at, here are the pain points, here's what they're looking for, here's why they found us. It's so invaluable. And you get to continue that conversation and continue building that relationship. I believe that all of our schools should have an emphasis on phone intake, because a lot of our leads are still coming in via phone. And if they don't come in via the phone, you still end up reaching out to them to schedule potentially. So you need to have a script, know what to say. Anytime we get good at anything, generally there's a process for it. It's true in academics, sports, business. It's not good enough to just hop on the phone and wing it. So no, this is my goal. This is the direction that we want to head. And then this is the script. Now that doesn't mean that you stick to the script if they start having the conversation, because that would make me a hypocrite. You want to have a script that catalyzes conversation, but make sure that you're using the same words in the same way at the same time that work. And then also train your team on this. Because I imagine most of the people listening to this are head of schools. You're not always there. You're not the one answering the phone, potentially. As a matter of fact, I'd assume, and Deneen, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe more often than not, you're not the one answering the phone.
Yeah.
Which means the person answering the phone doesn't always care as much as you. Not to say they don't care. And they don't always know what works. You know what works. If you just sat down and thought about it for a couple of minutes, you're going to know, based off of every conversation you've ever had, this is how I should start the call. These are the questions that I want answered. And so have that script, write it down, and then you're going to put it on a little sticky note right next to the computer screen at the front desk office, and just let everybody know, hey, we're pretty aggressive here with our script, and make sure that they're walking through that script. I think the script is going to be very different for every school, but I think it's important to have.
Mm-hmm.
I like to start with a leading question. And I actually got some pushback on this when I brought it up to Matt. But one of the things that I thought about for a Montessori school is when you answer the phone, it could be like, hey, thanks for calling Nido Marketing. Are you calling to schedule an observation? And then instantly, if I had 2 or 3 other questions beforehand, it kind of gets me into the zone that you want me to be in, and then allows us to kind of start the conversation and relationship building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, he didn't either. He didn't like it at
yeah,
all.
because if you're going directly to an admissions line, yes. But, not all schools have extensions that you go to or different or multiple people answering the phone. So I don't know if that would be a good go-to or not. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bad idea. I've had 2 nays from the 2 Montessorians I've pushed it past. So I'll kill it.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what other people think too.
Yeah.
I was thinking as you're explaining this too, this process alone can help us vet our families more too. There's so much information you're gathering from them in this process that when it comes to applications and offering enrollment contracts, and let's say you have a big long waiting list, I mean, this could help inform your decisions on who you welcome into your community, who are your mission appropriate families. And because I think that process can be daunting for a lot of people, right? It's like you've got 5 people that you want to offer contracts and you have 3 spots. You're not really sure what you go with your gut, but so this process will give you more information to make more informed decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One note that I have here that I think might be one of the most important, and this is specific to phone intake, is you want to get their email address. And you want to get their email address because email is still the highest performing marketing conduit in existence, and it's the cheapest. So it works the best and it's the least expensive. That's where we want to focus because all schools have a limited budget. The way to get their email address is not to ask for their email address, because if you ask me for my email address, I'm probably going to say no, or I'm going to give you the bad email that I never checked. Instead, as we're talking, you might say something like, I'm really interested in the Montessori math program. And then you get to say, oh my goodness, I have the best article on that. Can I send it to you? And they're going to say, yes. Why wouldn't you do that? So this is where having the content and knowing what your content library is like and then using it really comes into play. And Nido members, the content's there. For my 3rd and 4th plane members, you truly have no excuse. And I don't mean to be mean when I say that, but we create just an unbelievable amount of content. And for my 1st and 2nd plane members, we've got some really good articles in the resources section that are free. You don't have to pay for them. Just go use them. Matt wrote them himself. They're amazing. And it gives you, I think there's 10 or 15 of them. And then there's the content you write yourself, but be prepared to begin using that to trade it for an email. So if somebody has a specific question or pain point or issue, you're going to say, oh, you know what? I've got an awesome article on that. Let me send it to you. And then you take their email address. The one thing that I like to do, Christy, our writer, has been creating reading lists on a monthly basis. That's another, if they don't have a pain point, you can't really navigate to it. One thing you can say is, look, if you're interested in learning more about Montessori, we've got this great thing that we do on a monthly basis. We create this reading list. Can I send it to you? Once you have their email, you're now able to nurture them as prospects. And this is where it gets critically important, because there's more to say about Montessori than there is KinderCare. At KinderCare, is it safe? Is it clean? Right? I mean, I don't know what else to do. My kids don't go to KinderCare. Montessori is so in depth and there's so much information to provide. And I imagine Montessorians might do a pretty bad job at like trying to give it all to you at once, or not know where to start. An email nurture gives you the opportunity to offer small pieces of information in incremental doses over a period of time. That nurture works. That's why email's the highest performing marketing facet. So if you can get their email out of them, you drop them straight into MailChimp, you can automate your nurture. And we have a 7 email drip series inside of our member base or member area that you can use and modify to your own purposes. And now it's, here's why you go with Montessori. Here's why you go with us. Here are the things you need to know. And you're preparing these people, not just nurturing them towards you, but you're also preparing them. You're making them better prospects, which makes the entire intake process easier, better, faster, etc.
Right. And again, if we go back to like offering a product, Montessori is solving so many problems for our parents. And when we can easily identify what the problem is and then slowly drip in the solution, which is Montessori, right? We would all agree, who's on the call right now, I'm sure. Then you sell them on it slowly. Yeah. And that they can internalize it because they see you now as the solution. And that's ultimately what we want for our families, is to embody that idea of, our our school is it's a parenting partner.
Mm.
It's exactly what I imagine and envision in my children, and how I would like to incorporate aspects in my home. So there's just so many things that you can do in that nurture that solves the parenting problem, or at least gives ideas. I wouldn't say solving. We're always going to have parenting problems because parenting is hard. There's no
Sure.
job description. But we generally experience the same stuff, and so how do we respond to that? I think is a nurture. It's a process.
Absolutely. And I love the word nurture too. That actually predates my time with the Montessori community, but I found it a lot when I read some of Dr. Montessori's work. Um,
Mhm.
that was an emphasis for her. And so it's kind of nice because it passes over.
Right.
The very last thing I want to talk about, and I think maybe potentially one of the most important, is I feel strongly that you have to ask for the sale. Um, and I feel that way in B2B environments for sure, but I think that can translate to Montessori environment. I can tell you that when we are shopping for my kid's school, the school that he goes to now, my little boy is 4 years old and he goes to a Montessori school, and they're pretty exclusive and they had a waiting list. And part of me was kind of, you have that same thing that all humans have, which is like, am I good enough? Do they like me? Am I going to be able to go there? Um, and they didn't do a good job at kind of helping bridge that gap and set our fears aside. My wife and I were both sort of surprised when she called me. She's like, "Oh gosh, Sammy got in," um, which is fine. It's not an indictment of them, but I think that you get to tell people like, "Hey, Dean, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think you're a wonderful fit. I'd love to see your son in our school. So if you think we're the right fit for you, then please, here's the process. You say those words." And tell them like, I want to work with you. If you're open to working with me, I want to work with you. I think all too often in sales environments, especially for people that aren't comfortable with sales, you think you're being pushy, and really what you're doing is you look standoffish, like you don't want to work with them. And so I think it's really important to head in that direction. And Melissa has a question. She says, we're looking for a template to use to send out our tuition info, as well as starting an email nurture and autoresponders. Is templates for that and resources? Gosh, what a great question, Melissa. We do have a nurture template in the resources section. It's 7 emails long and it's generic. So it's not really geared specifically towards tuition info. It would definitely work for your autoresponders, but you would need to customize it a little bit for your tuition specifically. What I do for most schools is if an email comes in, no matter where they came in from, we drop them into the same nurture because it is kind of genericized. It starts with like school origin type information, explains the value of Montessori, and then sort of heads into the sales narrative that way. And then at the end, we use a PS that says, by the way, if you haven't scheduled a tour yet, please do so. And the reason we do that is because we're not using sophisticated marketing automation solutions that can tell this person has already scheduled a tour or not. So you want to make it sort of open-ended. But I do think that the nurtures that we have in our resources area would work for you, for your purposes. And I hope that answered your question. And if you decide that you want more, this is the thing that I tell our members all the time. Anything you want, tell us, we'll create it. We're your order takers. If you want content, imagery, videos, we're shooting a webinar right after this. Anything you want, we'll create it. Challenge me on that. Find me something I can't create for you. We want to be of service and we want to build something. If it would be relevant to our entire member base, we'll build up whatever it is you want and you need.
Right. I think we have yet to find a request that isn't relevant. I think, when people do come to us, it makes sense for most, if not all of our members. So
You're right. Not one.
Yeah. So don't let that stop you. If you're like, I'm not sure if this is good for the masses, chances are it probably is.
Yeah. Even if it's just good for a couple of other schools, we just don't want it where, you say, hey, we have this loop-de-loop slide and we want you to make a video on why loop-de-loop slides are good, because we probably wouldn't do that.
Right. Although we'd probably consider it because we're nice people.
Yeah, we'd probably do it anyway because, we like to help. That's 30 minutes. How do you think we did?
Good. I love this topic. I think, if we think about more discussion around what type of email nurtures are helpful, and the admissions process too, I think that's challenging in it. It's you can have an influx of inquiries. How do you sift through all of those and make sure that you are getting to them in a timely manner and that you're doing everything that you can to bring in those mission appropriate families? I think that's a whole nother topic, is just the admissions process and going through that.
I should add that to our topic list. Yeah. What are we doing next week, Deneen, on the schedule?
Matt is going to join us.
The Ask Me Anything.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it'll be good. We haven't seen him in a while, so I'm curious to hear what he's up to.
Yeah, Matt's in the hot seat. And then the week after, we've got a potential. Oh no, you're doing Montessori thought leaders.
Yep.
And then after that is our guest speaker. Do we know who that is yet, or any ideas?
Not yet. I'm still working out a few options.
Awesome.
So,
Well, I'm excited.
It'll be somebody good though, for sure.
Yeah. And that's it for those listening. You can join us live every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. We also record these and make them available in our member section. We're on Facebook Live now. We might do YouTube Live next week. Trying to get the word out there. So if you have any feedback for us, we'd love to hear it. Otherwise, thank you all so much for being here.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Deneen.
Yeah. Bye-bye.